Hey guys, welcome back. Today I thought it'd be kinda cool to go through the methods that each faction within the Halo universe use, both past and present, to deal with the Flood. Now, as we know, thanks to our handy little friend, Halo 2 Elite Miner number 7, weapons that are conventional aren't all that effective.
We should have brought weapons to burn these bodies. Every one is a potential vessel for the Flood.
So, let's start off with the most obvious one. So good they named the entire franchise after it. Halo. Halo is the galaxy's ultimate superweapon, built with the sole intention of stopping a Flood outbreak by not destroying it, but destroying its food, so it eventually dies out. The biggest misconception about Halo is that it just destroys all of the Flood, which is quite literally incorrect. It destroys the nervous system of organisms, which makes it completely impossible for infection forms to infect them, which is where the "it destroys their food" comes from. Halo's Pulse also doesn't destroy Flood spores, because they don't have a nervous system either, so I assume that after a while of no infecting, the spores just sort of like die out or dissipate or something. I doubt they'd survive forever without infecting something. These big circles of death that we've encountered in the Halo games are actually the second iteration of the Halos. Before the array of 7 rings that we know all too well today, there existed an array of 12 rings, each 30,000 kilometers in diameter, compared to the 10,000 kilometer diameter of the new array. The old array of 12 rings were created around the time of the Forerunner Flood War at the Greater Arc, which was essentially the bigger array's version of the Arc we know. It was just the Arc, but bigger in size. But all but one of these installations were destroyed. The one remaining ring that survived, Omega Halo, was eventually broken down to form Installation 07, which is the 7th ring in the new array that we know and love, while the other 6 were constructed at the Lesser Arc, which is, as you guessed, the smaller version of the Greater Arc. These rings were ultimately fired at the end of the Forerunner Flood War, putting a stop to the Flood, while also wiping out the Forerunners. It's really a two-sided coin. Alright then, let's move on to something far more smaller scale that the Forerunners used, and to a degree still do use, to control the Flood. Sentinels. 3 specific types of which, to be specific, which are used to control different scales of outbreak. The most common of which is the Aggressor Sentinel, which is only built to combat really small outbreaks. Their only weapon is the Sentinel Beam, which fires a directed beam of plasma, noted to be roughly 15,000 Kelvin in temperature, which, if you're unaware, is pretty fucking hot, which is why it's so effective against the Flood. It literally melts through the biomatter. There's also a gold variant of the Aggressor Sentinel that just uses an upgraded Sentinel Beam, firing blue plasma instead of gold, that does more damage. As far as I know, that is the only difference to this Captain Sentinel, or whatever it's called, but hey, we might get some more lore on these guys in the future. 2 Sentinels that are used for larger scale outbreaks are the Enforcer and Super Sentinel. The Super Sentinel is that big, slow Sentinel from Halo Wars 1 that fires a stunning beam, so it's likely that these things are used as support Sentinels, made to crowd control more than eliminate. The Enforcer is the more offensive large-scale Sentinel, built to combat both Flood and vehicles. To destroy vehicles, it has 2 pincers which pick up and crush them, and to target the Flood, it has a different type of Sentinel beam, so instead of firing directed plasma in a beam, it fires partially solid red energy bolts that can tear straight through biomass, and also fires high explosive missiles for controlling larger hordes. I can imagine these 2 types of Sentinel going together quite well actually. I can imagine the Super Sentinel stunning large hordes of Flood, while the Enforcer just bombs them with the missiles. Actually, quite surprised we haven't seen that yet. Anyways, let's move away from the Forerunner stuff to look at how the Covenant deal with Flood outbreaks. One thing you'll notice is that anything that's effective against the Flood tends to use extreme heat, considering how effective it is at destroying their biomatter. This is why the Covenant's heavy use of plasma is so effective against the Flood. From plasma rifles that scorch with each plasma bolt, to energy swords that slice through the flesh, practically the entire Covenant arsenal is capable of burning through rotting biomass, not only killing the entire combat form, but also ensuring it can't be reanimated after death. However, these weapons are only effective against individual combat forms. When it comes to a large-scale outbreak, the Covenant glassing beams are built perfectly to counter. Low-altitude bombardments were used during the flood invasion of Africa in 2552, where the Covenant ships get lower to the ground before firing a beam of superheated plasma, which not only destroys the ground where it hits, but also sends out a massive heat wave in a 360-degree radius around it. So all in all, glassing is arguably the most efficient flood countermeasure outside of firing the halo array. However, it does take a long time to glass large areas, and as you can imagine, it also requires a shit ton of energy, so as effective as it is, it ain't cheap. So let's finish today by looking at what the UNSC have to counter the flood. Fire, and lots of it. The main fire-spitting mechanism in the UNSC's disposal is the flamethrower, which for obvious reasons is super fucking effective against the flood. The raw, uncontrolled fire melts through the biomass and also destroys the infection form inside, leaving absolutely nothing behind for reanimation or reuse. The UNSC also have some more obscure thermal-based weaponry that we've never seen used in a game, most of which is based on thermite, an example being the thermite grenade. Now, thermite is a very logical choice considering how hot it burns. These grenades can burn up to 2,500 degrees centigrade, even underwater, so they could be super useful if they were distributed among troops or among specific sets of soldiers when the next outbreak occurs. Hell, maybe even the Spirit of Fire's Marines will make use of these thermite grenades on the Ark. Honestly, if they do play a part in Awakening the Nightmare, I could kind of see that happening. It makes total sense. There's also a very human-styled weapon of mass destruction that would be super effective if it was hypothetically used on the Flood, but it would have to be on a large-scale outbreak for obvious reasons. Nuclear weapons. Both the Havoc tactical nuke and Nova Bomb would absolutely fucking decimate an outbreak due to the immense heat and pressure they let out when they explode, along with their humongous area of effect. But honestly, I highly doubt either would ever be used unless the outbreak was legitimately massive. There'd be way too much collateral damage for it to even be a consideration, considering that Nova Bombs can basically crack planets in half, and Havocs aren't exactly firecrackers either. But either way, I would fucking love to see the UNSC somehow use a Nova Bomb on, I don't know, like a flood-infested planet at some point. That would be a fucking spectacle to see in Blur's graphics. That needs to happen. Alrighty then, that's all for today. They are just some of the possible sterilization methods from each faction, but the ones that I think are most effective and likely to be used at some point in the future. In Halo Wars 2, I can honestly see some of the cruisers glassing the surface of the Ark again, provided that some more banished cruisers show up, because right now, the Banished have no cruisers on the Ark, but hopefully more will show up, and also, hopefully, my beautiful Sentinel Enforcers will rise out of the Ark and start fighting the Flood in Awakening the Nightmare. I honestly have a weird fascination with these. I think their design is really cool, and also their lore, but I don't know, I think not having these guys, or at the very least a variation of them in Awakening the Nightmare, would be a massive missed opportunity to finally bring them back. But anyways, thanks a lot for watching, guys. I hope you learned something today. If the Flood ever invade Earth, then just refer back to this video, and you should have all the information you need to keep yourself safe. Anyways, thanks again for watching, guys, and I'll catch you in the next one.